Well, hi everyone. My name is Eric Cohn. I'm the artistic director for the Southampton Playhouse. Very happy to be joined today by David Koepp, the screenwriter of Black Bag. David, thank you for being here and doing this and for talking about this really wonderful film. It touches on so many great aspects of the spy genre, the espionage genre, also a kind of screwball energy of sorts that harkens back to another era of Hollywood storytelling. And I understand you've been thinking about this idea for a very long time. So can you give us a little bit of backstory on the history of why did it take so many years for you to go from conceptualizing this scenario to finally getting Steven Soderbergh on board to direct it?
Well, I did. It has been a while. I had the idea about 30 years ago, or maybe a little bit less. I was working on the first Mission Impossible, and we had a lot of CIA advisors, ex-CIA, and intelligence people, and we were learning a lot about their spycraft and how that works and CIA stuff. But I was always more interested in prodding them with inappropriate questions about their personal lives because I'm a writer, so I'm nosy, and I also wondered, how do you make this work? Your job, you lie for a living. And several people who got to talking said, yeah, it's a real problem. I don't the comment that stuck with me is pretty much in the movie as I remember it. One of the characters says, who am I supposed to be with? I can't date anybody outside the community because they don't understand, and I can't date anybody inside the community because we're all liars, including me. And when you can lie about everything in your life, how do you tell the truth about anything? And I thought, well, that sounds like great fun. Um, so I thought about it for a while, and I had a couple false starts over the years. I knew I wanted my spies to be married to each other, and I knew I didn't want to do a infidelity story, is somebody cheating or not, because I find those depressing. Either it turns out, yes, somebody was cheating, and then great, now the marriage is dead, or somebody was wrong, they weren't cheating, but for 3/4 of the movie I thought they were. So I wanted this to be a successful marriage, even if it's an odd marriage, and I wanted them to be 100% on each other's sides, even if things are getting scary and sticky. So um, that was, and they have to conceal things from each other. They must conceal things from each other, and yet they're married. How do you make that work? So I picked it up a couple times, and I put it down because there'd be another Married Spies movie. Like, I remember the Cameron movie True Lies came out, and I thought, I'll wait. And then I was going to do it, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith came out, and I thought, no, I'll wait. And then while I was writing this, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the TV series, came along, and I said, well, too late, I'm doing it anyway. I'll just have a different tone. And so here we are.
I love that. Also, the other thing that's kind of fascinating is that I think you're resurrecting an older tone of this kind of filmmaking. I was thinking about the Thin Man series and sort of that sort of cadence of dialogue where there's an element of sort of deadpan and irony to it that it almost sort of elevates the story where you don't have to know everything about the plot. You just kind of get lost in the dynamics of these characters. And I wondered if there were other films and traditions of filmmaking you were thinking about beyond the ones you just mentioned.
Oh, certainly. I wanted to write something where I had 6 intelligent characters who got to sound like intelligent people and have some witty dialogue, um, often quite biting. Um, I also was inspired by Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, great piece of theater and one of my favorite movies. Um, I wanted it to be a somewhat healthier marriage than the one in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is a low bar. Most marriages are healthier than that. And so I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we had a sort of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf spy movie? That I've not seen that. So one of the first ideas I had was this dinner party, which I wanted to go. I wanted to be able to write it long, and I wanted it right near the front of the movie, and I wanted to see how long I could sustain it for. 6 characters sitting at a table, with rising tension throughout and then a crescendo, as we have in the movie. And it ended up, an early draft of it was 20 pages. It came down to 12 or 14 pages. And I thought it breaks the ordinary rules of screenwriting. You're not supposed to do that. Movies are supposed to cut around a little more. You're not supposed to, plays can sit down at a dinner table for that long. But that was a challenge, and it was a challenge I so enjoyed. I thought, well, I'm going to have two. I'm going to end the movie the same way. So that was an early thing, and that was certainly somewhat inspired by Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which I do tip my hat to in the movie. Um, the Fassbender character is named George. That's actually a reference to George Smiley, the John le Carre spy catcher. Um, but there's a line in the movie that's actually from the poster for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Mm.
So that's me saying, hey, this was an inspiration.
I have a game. We go round the table, and each of us makes a resolution, the way you might at New Year. Some personal issue that needs to be addressed. I resolve to quit smoking, for example.
Oh, this is some groundbreaking shit, George.
But we don't make the resolution for ourselves. We make it for the person to our right.
I'm not sure that's a good idea.
I'm saying it's a terrible one.
Are you joking?
I don't believe he is.
I'm in.
I'm getting another bottle.
This is a new one.
Brand new.
I'm also curious about just the process of writing this kind of dialogue, because of course, film is such a visual medium, and you've written a lot of different kinds of films. And this notion of 1 page of dialogue is 1 minute can get, a lot of writers can get lost in their own head and fill that up too quickly and not break things down. And I wonder, in this case, when you have multiple characters and sort of the ping-ponging dialogue of sorts, how you figure out the rhythm between them so that it doesn't sort of end up being just too much too stagey, I suppose, because it really does feel like you found a kind of a natural rhythm for the way that the dialogue moves along in the movie.
Well, you can have long dialogue scenes, but boy, it better be good. And it better not just be clever or well written, it better be full of conflict. Because that's what really engages us, tension and conflict. That's what makes things feel like they go faster than maybe they are. So we'll put up with quite a bit. We'll put up with 10 pages of dialogue. Is it full of conflict? Do people seem like they're about to come to blows? Because that's what really propels us along. So I had two devices that I thought were going to help make the dinner party really spicy. Number one is the guests have been drugged without their knowledge, so they're saying things that they wouldn't ordinarily say, which is underplayed, but it lets me go to places in the writing that you just don't see at an ordinary dinner table. And the other is the game that George proposes, which is bound to bring out resentments and confessions. And those things helped me write a scene that was full of conflict, which eventually becomes physical conflict.
It's interesting that you worked with Steven Soderbergh on this movie, given that he's got his own sort of tradition of these slick sort of spy or heist movies of sorts that have a similar kind of energy. I'm wondering, what it was like to take this thing that you had been living with for a while and hand it off to him, given that, he's got his own sort of signature of sorts, especially since the two of you had just worked together on his previous film, Presence.
Yeah, and Kimmy before that, this is our
Kimmy.
third film in 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, we share a lot of the same favorite movies and a lot of the same references. We're almost exactly the same age. So we came up watching the same movies and are fans of the same movies. So there was an aesthetic there that I knew what he was going to like. I didn't write it for him. I wrote it for myself, but I'd been talking with him a lot. And then when I came time to look for a director, he really was the only one the producer and I considered. So I had a feeling he was going to like it because I know his sensibilities. And so Yeah, I think we were just in sync, and it's been the last 3 years have been a very nice creative role with those three movies. All three of them turned out well, I think. And I look forward to a fourth. But this one was so well received. Now I said I'm panicked about thinking of something else because surely they'll come after us and say we're sick of those guys. And he said, "Yeah, no problem. You just have to write it under a pseudonym."
Well, one step at a time. And the
Yeah.
other thing that is, of course, you really have some state of the art or top shelf actors in front of the
Oh, yeah.
camera here. And I feel like that's also part of this genre in a way, is letting certain kinds of actors really dominate in the way that they do like nobody else. So, I mean, what was that process like for you? Did you have stars in mind when you first wrote this thing all those years ago?
People pop to mind. I mean, I only wrote it a year and a half ago. But people pop to mind as you're writing. But I'd really try to keep actors out of my head because you're going to end up writing specifically to an actor soon enough anyway, once they come in. So I like to let the characters be themselves for as long as possible. And I think that they were, because this movie relied on vividly drawn characters more than most. Um, I wrote bios for all of them. I really lived with them and figured out where are they from, what do they like, what happened in their childhood, what's their relationship with their parents like. A lot of that sort of detail that, sometimes you don't do in a movie if it's more of an action movie or moves faster than that. Um, so I really knew them quite well. And then, Steven and Carmen Cuba, who's the casting director, just cast. It's one of the things he does absolutely best is cast. And I'm taken with every single one of them. And Fassbender, I'm particularly delighted with the way he trusted himself to underplay. He
Mm.
gives away very little. He plays a character whose job is to get other people talking and to give away nothing. And he took that very seriously. So that when you eventually reach a point where like he'll raise an eyebrow or look concerned and you're like, wow, something must have gone terribly wrong because he's freaking out.
Right, right.
But most of the time he's just impassive and he's great.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about that. You can't write arching an eyebrow into the script in the way that he does it in this movie. It feels like it's something he has to figure out for himself.
He's very strong at it. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum, you have Marissa Abella, who plays Clarissa, the youngest agent, who's really the audience surrogate
Right.
in that she gets to say things like, "You people are all nuts. This is sick. This is," and which is how we feel. And because she's a bit younger than the rest and she's a bit newer to the job, and because of who she is, she gets to be quite open and voluble, and she's a lot of fun to write to.
Now, let me ask you, I mean, the films that you've done, especially with Soderbergh of late, are very contained movies. And I know you came back to do this new Jurassic World film after taking a break from the franchise for quite some time. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the contrast between writing something that is such a small scale and something that's meant to be this big spectacle? You know, at the Playhouse, obviously we make room for both because we've got that big IMAX screen. So
Mm.
it's a kind of a fascinating duality to different kinds of cinematic experiences.
Well, I like all kinds of movies, and I'm going to like coming to the Playhouse again because you play all kinds of movies. I went like just in the last week, uh, I went to see I'm Still Here, the Brazilian film, so great in a movie theater. I went to see Play It As It Lays. There was a revival of the Joan Didion book Play It As It Lays from 1970. I went to see that film forum. And last night I watched Electric State, the $300 million Netflix action thing. I like all different kinds of movies. I'm in it for all kinds of movies. So I have consciously tried to write different kinds and to skip around from different genres, um, so that if you have success in one thing, Hollywood will reward that, God bless them, and try to encourage you to do more. But if you ever want to do something different, that's on you, and you have to write it for free on spec and go try to put it together yourself. And so I've wanted to try my hand at many different genres. And you go in thinking the first question you ask yourself is, what is the value of this movie? Not like what's it worth, but what is it that this movie holds dear? And if it's a comedy, it should be funny. If it's an action movie, it should be exciting. So then what is that value and how do I serve it? Just before this, Stephen and I had a movie called Presents come out. It cost like $2 million. The value of that movie was it was spooky and unsettling. So everything you do, the music you listen to while you write it, the settings, the problems that the characters face, those all need to be somewhat unsettling. And boy, is that movie unsettling. It's very creepy. Um, this movie, the value of it is the value you would get both from watching an older Hollywood witty movie with beautiful movie stars, so it needs to be beautiful, and also the fun and complexity of a spy plot. Is it complex and is it beautiful? That was what I was going for. And I needed to remind myself, no, this is a Hollywood movie that needs movie stars to be in it. And I don't want to see a bunch of people's phones or laptops. Um, like you do, there's some in the movie because there have to be because it's 2025 and they're spies. But I wrote on a card on my screen while I was working that said faces, not screens. And that was to remind me, don't have people text. Contrive to get them in the same room to have a scene so actors can play scenes together. This is a beautiful movie with great actors in it. So I tried to keep that in mind.
I love that. Well, last thing I would ask you is just off of the sort of the big movie question, since we will be playing Jurassic World later this summer. I wonder what it's like for you to write for audience expectation or being aware of audience expectation, especially when it comes to something that has, it's a franchise with a series of movies associated with it. And coming back to something where when you wrote the original, obviously the audience wasn't there. The audience expectations were very different than they would be for something that has, a lineage of sorts.
Yeah, it just gets harder and harder. The expectations for the first movie were it was were that the dinosaurs would look fake because we'd never seen anything. This was 1993. We'd never seen any dinosaurs that weren't stop motion or that looked particularly good. And so the fact that the movie came out at the dawn of CGI, it really was like The Jazz Singer in that it changed everything. Movies changed, expectations changed. So then the expectation going into subsequent movies was, well, we know the dinosaurs will be 100% photorealistic, so it better have good characters and be kind of funny and be an exciting story. And sometimes some of the movies succeeded at that. Some of the movies succeeded less. So we were trying on this one what we wanted to do was say, okay, we're gonna have great dinosaurs, new ones, cool ones. It's gonna be wonderful. We've got some really good actors. What we'd like to try to do is recapture the tone of that very first movie to the extent that we can. It was a bit of lightning in the bottle, but we want to remember this is supposed to be fun. And it's supposed to be exciting and it's supposed to be somewhat funny. But I remember after writing Steven Spielberg and I batted ideas around on that movie for the new one for quite a while before we settled on the one we wanted. And I'd sent him a 2 or 3 page idea that was somewhat dark. And he wrote back, well, one big note, this was going to be fun, right? And so I wrote that one down and put it on my screen. This is going to be fun, right? So that I could remember, wait a minute, this isn't about the end of the world. This isn't about, you know, climate change. We got all that waiting for us as soon as the movie is over out in the this 2 hours needs to be fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a good mantra for life in general.
yeah, this was
Yeah.
supposed to be fun, right?
I write this little newsletter thing that goes out to people and kind of contextualizes what we're doing in terms of both the first run, but also the various repertory things. We opened with this great series of 1932 films because that's the year the theater opened, and it was really well attended. So that was heartening to
What'd
see.
you have? What was in there?
Trouble in Paradise, uh,
yeah.
which is a very underseen Lubitsch movie, it turns out, and that was great. We had a packed house for that, and so watching a Lubitsch movie with an audience is just such a great experience because it hits so well. We
Yeah.
showed the 1932 Scarface.
Ah,
It was really great. We 4K restoration available for that one, and the other one we showed on Oscar weekend was Grand Hotel, which won Best Picture that year.
oh, right.
So, and that was great. I mean, it's the only movie in history that only won Best Picture and wasn't nominated for any other prizes.
Huh.
But it's stacked with such a great cast, and of course, Greta Garbo is it's like top form.
Yeah.
So,
Well, obviously, I don't need to tell you or anybody at this screening this, but the experience of seeing something in a movie theater is, it's great for all the obvious reasons it's great. It's also just there's some movies, if I was going to watch Grand Hotel and I tried it at home, I know myself and I know I'm going to pause it and I know I'm going to look at my phone and I know I'm going to be, but if I go to a movie theater and sit down and actually watch the whole thing, it's just a transformative experience.
well, David, thank you so much for doing this. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Kurt.
it. All right, have a good
Likewise.
one. Bye.